As long as everybody else is cool, I'm cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so Hanush, you need to unmute yourself. And then you need to tell me how many people, Katie, how many people have added new people in the last month? We're almost at the end, right?
Yeah, it's second last class or second last session.
Yay. So this is a good one, but I just want to do a recall. Are people making their calls? Are they adding people? Is it struggling, or what's going on out there? Are people struggling?
I made some calls last week, which was nice. Sorry.
Good.
That's okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, some good response. A couple people I hadn't talked to since I mailed them stuff, but since I switched brokerages, I hadn't actually talked to them on the phone. And they were like, oh, we got your letter, I got your card, like, thanks so much for connecting. And it just sucks doing it, but once you do it, you always feel so much better.
Good for you. That's the key, is to do the multiple follow-up, like you send the email, you send the, snail mail, whatever you send, or Facebook posting or whatever, but it's the direct calling them, which is the hard part.
Yeah.
And it's actually easy once you actually do it, because they're happy to hear from you, right?
Yeah, and it's quick usually.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it gets long, which is one of my problems. I get way more social. Did anybody read the materials for today? There was a kind of a good script in there about calling people from out of town. Did anybody read that?
I've not gone through it yet.
I haven't.
So I don't know which page it was on, but it was really helpful because it was sort of easy to talk about to somebody and just say, yeah, I'm still in the business, or I'm in the business and things are going well in Toronto or whatever. And then you're literally asking them, do they know of anybody who might be moving in the Toronto, area, moving from or to, and it's actually putting it out there. It's like literally going from a social call to one of your either family members or friends or whatever to a business call, but that's okay, because like it's okay to have a business, you know what I mean? Like it's okay to admit that you're in the business, you're working, you're trying your sort of hardest to sort of generate some new clients. And also you can also offer, like, for example, they live in Collingwood or they live in Vancouver or they live somewhere else. You can easily just say also, if you know of anybody even in your own neighborhoods, I've got a great list of realtors who might be able to, we might be able to kind of refer. Oh, there's some action going on there. So it's a good, I don't know how to mute this. Paige, when you hear something, you got to mute people.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Is it Katie? Who is it? Maybe. It's me. Yeah, it's Katie.
Okay, I'll mute it. Got it.
So maybe she was making coffee or something.
I was.
That's what I thought. So anyway, I was just sort of saying that it's, for example, I mean, in a kind of weird example, Jay, my stepfather moved from Vancouver to Toronto last year, and he's getting a ton of referrals back from where he used to work. So it's possible, but also, I mean, I know agents who have built their whole, like a huge amount of their business based on getting sort of building up kind of names of relationships with people in different towns or cities. Like, for example, for me, I refer people out in Ajax or Whitby or Oshawa or Peterborough or Lindsay, like, all kind of around, because there's a ton of, Barrie is a big one, Collingwood is a big one, Creemore. I've sent a lot of referrals there, like clients of mine who have then moved out there. And again, that's you just getting in touch with those people. Like, for example, I looked on Facebook today, one of my clients moved to Collingwood last year. So then you go, hey, Krista, how's Collingwood, or how's your Blue Mountain or whatever? And then you go, and then you start talking about business again, and it's okay. It's all good. So I thought it was a really good, easy script to use.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like as long as it's coming from the heart and you're not being annoying about it, like if you're not calling them every single day, do you know anyone yet? Do you know anyone yet? That you're good.
Well, often you never call them ever. So yeah. It's more the opposite sometimes of, you don't think that people in another city would know. Like Kitchener, for example, is another good referral place. There's a lot of back and forth between these things. So a lot of Guelph, I'm finding like just a lot of people want to move to smaller towns, and they might have other friends that they know who are also moving there. you know? So anyway, I just thought it was a good little helpful script. So what else? Anybody else made their calls this week? Anybody else added new people? Give me some good stories here.
I'm just starting on the list. I haven't got my licenses. I don't think I can start calling people yet.
How are you feeling about telling people? What's your sort of plan?
I'm nervous.
Mm-hmm. So who here
Yeah.
can help Hanush with her nervousness? What are you nervous about?
I don't know. I've never done it before. So first of all, I don't know how to start. And all the information that I'm getting is very overwhelming.
Well, it's okay to be nervous, I guess is the whole point. And I think you can be nervous 5 years and 10 years or 3 years or whatever years. Like Brianna just said, you know, she had to get over the nervousness of calling her own clients after changing brokerages. Like I don't know if it ever goes away. I don't know. We tell these stories in our head. I think it's a story in your own head. That's the weird thing.
Yeah, maybe. I think for me, the challenge is getting the clients.
Mm-hmm. I think you have to sort of like pretend, fake it till you make it, you know? And you're like, yeah, man, I'm a realtor. Like, I'm a natural. Like, instead of saying, oh, I'm new in the business and I'm really nervous, it's the opposite. It's like, hey, I got a great group with me and a lot of resources and I'm really well educated and I'm here to help.
Yep.
It's just a different identity, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I have this thing about calling people, which is, I swear to God, I call them in my head and it's like I've spoken to them. You know what I mean? So it's a really bad habit. I was thinking about you. I really was thinking about you, but I don't actually do it. So I got to get, more consistent with some of that too. But I think social media and texting and messaging and DMs and all that stuff is all sort of part of it.
Yeah, that's what I'm like. I have very little friends that I would actually call ever. I don't think I have one friend that I ever call on a regular basis. So everyone that I've reached out to has been through either Facebook, Instagram, or social media, but I'm going down the same path of, the talking about me getting my license and everything. And I found it's helpful to talk to the people that you know the best first.
Mm-hmm.
So you get confident with it and then kind of work your way down to people that, I'm talking to people I haven't talked to in 4 years now, but I'm more comfortable with it.
Well, even like, say, for example, a Facebook lead on one of your listings or one of your ads or whatever from a while ago, and you're nervous about calling them because you don't call people and you've only talked through Facebook and stuff like that. I would say if you get into a conversation with somebody, you can transfer it into
100%. Yeah.
a call. Once you start that whole texting and then you're like, oh, fuck it, I'm just going to call them because this is not, you know what I mean? Like, it's actually, that's the perfect time to,
Yeah, I have no issues with talking to people on the phone. Especially like I don't mind talking to people I don't know on the phone. That's no problem at all. I could cold call all day long, but it's calling my friends that I don't talk to on the phone that just adds a layer in my head that I need to get past.
So what do other people think here? Katie, Anna, any help here on how you talk to your actual friends that you don't normally call, and you might think that they're maybe, I don't know, that you're calling for the wrong reasons, like you're calling because you want business or whatever?
I think in general, you have to keep in mind that people are always excited for you to have new opportunities. Usually people are very positive, like, congratulations, you have a new career. Like, in general, people will most of the time respond with positivity. And keep in mind they are your friends and hopefully they want the best for you. And like you said, if you come from a good place, if you ask them how they are, they'll likely ask you how you are back. And they'd be like, well, I've started a new career. And then it's pretty organic.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing through social media.
Go ahead, Paige.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I think yesterday on the Bold call, it's, that you're coming always from a place of service is really good as well. You're coming from a place of service. And as a realtor, you have a vast, connection and network. And what do they need? Can I help you with anything? Do you need a tutor? Do you, need a plumber, like an electrician, a lawyer, like we know all of these people. So you're reaching out to them. Yes, you're telling them you switched a career, but how are you doing? Genuinely care about these people. And if you need something that you don't know where to find it right now, I may know them, or someone in my office does, and I can connect you.
And that's true, like for sure, about things like also showing, you're referring, for example, a roofer. So one of your people needs, one of these people, they're talking about, or they've got a plumbing problem or something like that. Or like one of my clients texted me a picture of his front yard and said, do you need, it needs help. Do you know a landscaper? And when you're referring, then it also demonstrates the same behavior that you're hoping that they're going to do for you, which is refer you eventually. And the other thing I always sort of say about these calls is that you're not asking them to move. Like that's not the point of the call. The point is, and even when I'm putting out a new listing, it would be like, oh, I've got this great new listing, but it's not, it's like, who do you know? Not, do you want to buy this listing? Because that's not the goal. And, it's their sphere that you're really trying to reach. So it's not really your best friend who's, that you're trying to reach, because presumably your friend is going to use you. The more you demonstrate that you're a pro, but it's more the who in their sphere, who do they know from their work? Who do they know from their, I don't know if they've got kids, little league, who do they know from their sort of other groups that they're in, like running clubs or, teams or whatever they do. So I think a lot of it has to do with that too, which is like, who do you know? And that's a question. It's a good question. So today's topic is closing the deal. And when you first sort of go through the materials, you might think, oh, it's kind of boring and it's kind of like American. That was sort of my first impression. And I think what people are forgetting is, first of all, this can be super fun part of the business. This is the fun part of the job. Like this is going from like an actual offer to closing the actual. So that's kind of the best part of the job, I think. But also a lot of things do go wrong. So, and the better prepared you are, the less they go wrong. So we have this letter called, I forget what we call it. It's about basically on an airplane, like so many things could go wrong on an airplane, and you can list them, like, and today, for example, a condition doesn't go through. Brianna had 2 of those last call we had, which was like 2 offers didn't go through on one of her listings. Like that's a major, oh yeah, we call it the turbulence letter. So in an airplane, like everything could go wrong. You got somebody coughing next to you. You got all these terrible things in an actual airplane. But say in real estate, you take the same sort of theory, which is there's a ton of things that a non-professional realtor screws up. And it's very obvious to me because I've been in the business a long time and I've done a lot of deals. So I know when the good ones are good. But even, for example, a good mortgage broker, a good lawyer, a good, like those people make your life way, 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 way easier. So that's, and for example, even a good clause in an offer, like it sort of starts from being a super pro from the very beginning to the end. Part of that is communication. Part of that is a lot of these things that we're going to sort of talk about today. But it is, I keep seeing myself in my little thing. Hi.
Can I give an example of, because you just talked about turbulence and a clause in an offer.
Yes.
So for that condo deal, like the 500 grand one, chump change, but so we finally got one to go through, and we kind of took like a discounted price because it was a very quick closing, because my seller needed a quick closing, because if not, she has to renew her financing and then you pay the penalties or whatnot. So we negotiated a little bit of a lower price because we got them from a 60-day to a 30-day closing. But now this stupid Keller Williams Schedule C, I guess it has a clause that says because of COVID that the buyer can extend closing for whatever X amount of time at no cost. So the cooperating agent just called me being like, oh, we actually need to extend closing. And I'm like, well, in the amendment, you better come up on your price then. And he's like, well, actually, you're Schedule C2. So I'm getting rinsed now.
Oh, fuck. I'm not laughing. I'm like, this is the problem. This is turbulence. This is a very good example of turbulence. Now,
so I don't know what I should do. I mean, I already told him, like, you better come up in price in that same amendment kind of thing. And he's like, well, your schedule C2, which is like, fuck, I shouldn't have attached the office's schedule.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm totally 100% with you. So is it mutually agreed upon, or can the buyer unilaterally change it?
I don't know, like, this is literally, I just got the message. So I need to obviously like go back into that clause and then I guess talk to the seller's lawyer. But I mean,
Bring it up.
yeah.
Yeah, no, these are, and it's very true, like and that's sort of a classic example. So when I'm presenting an offer, and honestly, I have 27 years in the business. I know how to read an offer, blah, 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 blah. But if you rush through it, you have to like read every single clause and really take the time. And this is the problem, like, because like, for example, I've got multiple offers. Say we've got 5 offers on a place and we're like all looking, and it's really only the price, but it's not always just the price, right? Like there's always little things. A clause can be, you can say mutually agreed upon, or with 24 hours notice for an access visit, for example. And those, sorry, my dog is making noise. And those make a huge, huge difference, right? 24 hours notice means a seller has to be available has to allow it within 24 hours, or being given 24 hours versus mutually agreed upon. Do you see what I mean? So easy things. So let's hope that it does say somehow mutually agreed upon, and also, just sort of talking it out with the buyer's, agent and all that kind of stuff. And that again is a huge part of, I know what Paige is doing right now.
Yeah. Sorry, Brianna, are they the result of a mandatory quarantine?
No.
Then it says becomes the subject of a mandatory COVID-19 virus quarantine that results in either party's inability to complete the transaction as scheduled, and then goes down from there. But if they're not the result of a mandatory quarantine, then C2 does not apply.
Because that's like my whole purpose of attaching, the office's schedule was to protect my clients, not to screw them, right?
Yes, and this was directly from Mark Weidsleder, the lawyer from Real Estate Associates. So I am sure that,
because they're blaming it on their financing, saying that they can't get their financing quick enough and they need 1 more week. And I said, well, I mean, you shouldn't have given me a firm offer then.
Yeah.
Well, okay, back up, both of you guys. One is reading it through really closely, and then the other is having a very close relationship with the buyer's realtor. Yep. And that's part of the course today, which is really, again, asking the questions, getting into it, and then you can sort of say, well, and that's the good news, Brianna, that you have, that they told you it's because of the financing, and it doesn't actually qualify under that clause. So they will presumably have to pay for it.
So give me a call after, Brianna, and we can dig into it.
Yeah.
Well, is this not a good case study for our newbies?
It's a very good case study. I love it. Right. But again, it's all about, like, for example, I had a situation just last week where I have a closing coming up and they have a basement suite and the tenant has given notice. And so that property closes before the tenant's notice is over. So like it closes June 11th, I think, and the tenant is leaving at the end of June. So it means that right now they have to show the property. So it's been really, really helpful to have a really close relationship with the buyer's realtor so that we can sort of work it out what's in the best interest of both parties, and not everybody gets upset about showing during COVID, or the tenant getting upset, or any of the protocols and all the sort of stuff that goes sort of with it. But I think in your case, Brianna, I think you're in good shape, dude. You've heard that it's through the financing. Again, financing is a huge issue that could come up many, many times in your careers as far as needing an extension. That's a classic request. So, and Brianna's thought process behind asking for more money is totally valid, meaning it's going to cost the seller money to have to extend their financing and have to maybe carry 2 properties for an extra week. So there's bridge financing, and then there's the mortgage, you know, whether there's a, you know, how much it costs to break it or whatever, all the different sort of expenses that a seller comes up with. So this is like a classic example of, this is a stressful situation for the both sides, but we also need to keep the buyer on side, and we don't want them to default either, right?
Mhm.
Speak up, Brianna, what are you thinking?
Well, if they're going to default and we get to keep the deposit and I can sell it for more money, then yeah, I want them to default.
But is that true, that if they default, you can sell it for more money and keep the deposit?
Potentially, right? I mean, they would go to the lawyers.
Can you explain exactly what happens to the deposit when you don't complete a deal?
Well, I mean, the seller's supposed to get it, right? But I guess the brokerage holds on to it until the lawyers come to an agreement.
Or a judgment is given.
Well, that's the thing. It gets a little more complicated than that. It basically, it's held in trust and nothing can happen to the money. The seller doesn't get the money. The buyer doesn't get the money. Nobody gets the money. The agents don't get paid. What happens is they have to come to an agreement whether you're going to resell it, and then the buyer is actually responsible for all the expenses, because it's not just the price difference between selling a property and a different price. Like, you may sell it for more, you may sell it for less. So it's that, but it's also all those expenses we talked about. Your seller having to stay there, your seller having all the financing things, maybe bridge financing, all the different. So in fact, the judgment could be a lot more than just that. But certainly you cannot tell your seller that you're about to get the money if they default. They don't get the money. Like, that's the bottom line. They don't get the money. And they will eventually, but it takes quite a long time.
And I can tell you that if the buyer defaults, like 9 times out of 10, commission is not paid to the agent on that deal ever.
It will be zero.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not.
No, that's not. Yeah, that's definitely not, because the deal didn't come together. But it's just when a seller says that to me, and they say it quite a bit to me, by the way, they're like, oh, it doesn't matter if they default because I'll just get their $100,000 deposit or whatever. But they don't get it. It's
No.
in some sort of no man's land forever.
We
Not
had-
forever, but for quite a while.
We had one from 2014, 2015 that I just cut back. We had 20,000 in trust, and 15 went back to the buyer and 5 went to the seller.
There you go. That's also, actually, you guys, this is such an interesting conversation, and we're kind of getting into the heart and soul of it, but there's also the debate of whether you want to mutually release people or not, right? So you need a mutual release to try and sell the property again, but if you do a mutual release, then the buyer is not responsible for the damages. So it's a very gray, massive gray area. So Hanush, this is really interesting for you, but everybody here, is that this is why you need your brokerage. This is why you need your broker of record. This is why you need to be part of a professional, like you can bounce ideas off me and a whole bunch of other people who are really super familiar with this kind of stuff. Obviously lawyers are a good resource, but it's a very complicated sort of scenario. So there's no, like in real estate, there's a lot of gray. There's a lot more gray than you think.
It's all gray.
It's all gray. and again, a lot of it is because every scenario is different. Your seller, Brianna, has a specific reason why she wanted a 30-day close than a 60-day close, and it will make a big difference to her. So she was willing to take a less price, right? So other people are, in different scenarios. So it's fascinating. But this is the time when you guys can really get your referrals. This is when you're comforting your client and comforting them through the stress, not only of COVID, obviously this is a huge opportunity, but also a stressful time. But a buyer request like this is also super stressful. So it's really great. When they say, for example, I don't know, I'll say, because I'm getting my tires changed tomorrow from winter to summer. If they make a mistake, like for example, whatever, it takes them 6 hours instead of the 2 hours, and then I have to wait and I don't get my car and all this sort of stuff. It's the problem that if they come up with a great solution, you love them more. So that whole problem solving, situation that Brianna's in right now, this is the opportunity that you have to get, this is where the referrals come in. This is where the, I love my realtor more than life. This is the person who's like my defender. This is the person who's like going to take care of me and I can trust her with my life. And this is the bonding time. So, so this is your opportunity, Brianna. You get to be your, advocate for your seller. You get to be the, the negotiator again, but also part of it is to blow it up and just say, listen, okay, the buyer's agent came up to me and this is what they said. And I went right through it all, and I knew exactly that you weren't in that position. And I was going to, what I mean? Like explain it to them, tell them how you fixed it, and maybe give them a bottle of wine or something for their stress, and they love you forever. It's an interesting time. Like the closing times, this is when we're getting close to them getting their money too. It's not just us getting our money, it's everybody getting their money. So it's a very emotional time, and also, legal time, mortgages and insurance and all that shit's happening. So this is like the big important sort of time to understand what you're sort of doing and stuff like that. I'm just reading my student material. So in this chapter, we're going to prepare our clients. So what happens, does anybody have like a system from closing, like from offer to close? Do you have like a checklist? Paige, do you have a checklist?
We are putting one together, yes. Danielle and I have been putting it together. I think we actually sent it to you maybe, but yes, we are.
I'm talking about a checklist for your own closings, like forget you being a realtor, like you as an office. Do you have a checklist?
Yeah, we have like 4 of them.
Right.
So yeah.
How do you handle it? What does it look like? Don't give us the details, but like, what's the general, like, is it in a list? Is it on an Excel spreadsheet? Like, what do you do?
It's in a list. We print it out and put it on the file. So there's a listing checklist. Then there is a deal checklist. Once you have a deal, whether it's a listing or a buying deal, it looks different. And then we have a post-closing checklist. And all of them get stapled on top of each other on the actual file folder. And we actually have also just put them into Command so the real estate agent can see our process.
Cool. And what about scheduling things? So one of the big things that I've always noticed about real estate closings is that they're all different. Like you could have a closing on May 6th today. You could have a closing on May 8th. You could have a closing on May 12th. You could have a closing on May, whatever, 25th. And when you're looking at some of these plans in Command or in Agent Office or in Top Producer or in whatever program you're using, they always say 30-day close. But it's very confusing because then you need to, so the way I basically handled it, do you see what I mean? Because you can't say, oh, it's May 1st and it's a 30-day close. It's not a 30-day close. You actually have to work sort of backwards. So for example, Brianna had that 30-day close on hers, but what if it's a 45-day close or a 55-day close or a 62-day close?
Okay, so I have an update. I texted him. I'm like, C2 is only applicable if he's in a virus quarantine. What's the issue with financing? Do you need a new mortgage broker referral? The seller would have to pay a penalty for the 1-week extension. Is the buyer able to cover these costs? And he goes, it's very personal. I can't say too much. For mortgage, it's getting slow. We need 5 more business days during this time. I believe it is very reasonable extend.
It's okay.
I know, but it's like if it's going to cost her $3 or $4 grand, like they should have to pay that.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about that though. It's going to happen. You are right, but we don't want to be right. We want to be like working together.
We want a win-win.
Yeah, win-win. Good one. That's the KW motto: win-win or no deal.
So what do I tell him? Like,
so now it's time to get off the text and onto the phone, right, Brad? This is when it goes from texting each other to.
No, the English is not good.
I can tell. But I can also sense from you that you're a little like back up a bit. So you got to like get a bit zen yourself and go, okay, we're understanding that they're feeling like this. And the reality is that maybe we just need to talk to the lawyers, and maybe we're too close to closing, and maybe we need to hand it off to them if the communication isn't sort of between you guys, if it's not working between you guys. you see what I mean?
Yeah.
But I would just say, in your own mind, you just need to talk to him more and just say legally, you are responsible for closing. So, and then legally she is responsible. She's going to be incurring a lot more damages. So reality is that we're not able to extend it.
Gotcha. Okay.
You see what I mean? You can do it though. It's all good.
Well, I already told him like it's not happening. I told him he's got to give me another like $8,000, but.
It's so funny though. It's so funny. So this is like such a classic deal where things start to unravel, and again, and it happens in the negotiations too. Like when, for example, somebody gives you an offer that's insulting to the seller. Say you got it listed at 600 and you get an offer for 480 or something like that. Like it's like, is that, I don't know. Do you really think my seller is going to accept that? Like, you can get really angry about these things, or you can go, okay, what's going on? Where are we at? Well, let's work together. Here are the comps. Like, you can do this. But it gets very dicey. I'm just going to tell you, this business is super dicey and crazy. That's the beauty of it. But it makes you crazy too. It makes you like go, I think, we just have to be careful of our own. So a lot of it's communication, honestly. It's talking to the other people. Okay. Now we're back to, my program. I'm sorry. I'm trying to read through my student material and it's hating me. Okay. You okay, Brianna?
Yeah.
Are you focused?
Yeah, I'm listening.
This is helpful. This is really
Now that
helpful.
you know that you're in the right or you're in the win, like it's good.
Oh
Yeah.
no, I'm fine. I'm just sharing so the other people can learn from it, because I found,
Thank you.
before in my old office, everyone talks about the good deals and the good stuff, and it's like you learn from the hard conversations.
Absolutely. 100%. So in a successful contract to close process, the transaction closes on time as expected. The process is smooth and painless for all parties, and you win future business due to your 10 plus customer experience. That was what they said. So how do you ensure these three outcomes? Brad, any ideas on how to ensure those three outcomes?
I was trying to find the page you were at to read the page.
Sorry, I'm on page 11.
So I was looking and kind of listening. 1 second.
On the student material. So successful contract to close is the contract closes on time, process is smooth and painless, and you win future business, meaning you get referrals.
Setting expectations.
Yeah, good one. Katie, fantastic. I love that. So when do you do that?
When you sit down and you do your listing presentation or your buyer presentation. You go through your packet and then you ask them about their expectations, and then you let them know how you work, etc. So that everything's out on the table.
That's good. Does anybody else have any other theories behind that?
Well, just being open with communication both ways and not hiding anything helps too. That goes hand in hand with setting expectations.
What I find is that people don't remember. So I kind of feel like they need to keep being told as the process goes along, which means, hi, Jay. I see your face now. Is like, for example, you get an offer and then you explain all over again. Okay, we're getting an offer and this is what's going to happen. And it could go back and forth a bit, and it probably will have conditions, and we'll get through the conditions. And then we're going to be in touch with the banks and your lawyer and your blah, blah, and your movers. And then this is what's going to happen. And they may come back to us a few times, but I'm going to be in touch with all these people. Like, basically, you kind of need to keep explaining the process right through to the end, because I find that they can't remember, and they don't remember. Even if they've done it before, they don't remember. So a lot of it
You just have to keep coaching them.
Yeah, exactly. Keep coaching them. Keep coaching them all the way along. Okay, and then what else? Laura, are you there? I see your smiling face. There you are. All right. So do you have any thoughts on how you ensure that they're going to give you a referral afterwards?
So yeah, it's important that they feel like they've been having support all the way.
Beautiful.
They have to feel like you've been there all the time, good communication, and as you said, it's the first time. If it's the first time that they do it, for sure they're a little bit scared. They're afraid that they're gonna make some mistakes or anything. So they need that support from you, making sure that you know what you're doing and that you'll be there in case if anything goes wrong.
Absolutely. And by the way, these kind of conversations, just like Brianna said, is that the more you talk to other people and understand that stuff does go wrong and how do we handle it? I can give you like a million stories of where things have kind of gone wrong but for example, I had a situation where somebody couldn't fit their car down the driveway, but they had already bought the property. And then they want to come back to you and say, well, my car doesn't fit down the driveway or something like that. Like things can go off the rails all the way through. Well, I said, similar. I'm like, well, first of all, they had plenty of opportunity to come and see the property prior to making an offer, and it was a firm offer. And then second of all, I made them initial the survey, right? And then I knew from knowing the property myself is that it was pretty narrow driveway. It was old-fashioned, old school kind of driveway, for when the cars were really small or narrow. So, I had myself covered, but my goodness, they were pissed. So again, it's back to the communication, working together. Like I had a situation last year where the next door neighbor was doing a huge renovation, and you can see the renovation, but when you're in the house, like it was noisy, man. And then they dug this big hole, and then it turned out that it was affecting our foundation, and all this stuff can go wrong. Like it just keeps on happening. So, it really helps to have the other realtor on side. It helps for you to have a good relationship with your lawyer. And also just the whole holding hands with your buyer or seller. That's sort of a big part of it. So,
Julie, I have a question about what she was saying. Brianna was talking about the buyer not being able to close on time.
Yeah.
And let's say if they ask for the extension and she granted and still they can't secure the mortgage, so they're most likely going to lose their deposit because they couldn't close in time, right? But at that point, if the buyer loses the deposit, can the buyer sue the real estate agent at one point?
They can sue the real estate agent if their realtor made a mistake somewhere along the process. So it's really more along, like, for example, if, in that example that I gave you of the driveway being too narrow, that's where you're like, they can maybe go after the realtor and say, listen, you didn't explain what the survey really looked like, what the survey meant. And you made me sign it, and I didn't really know what I was signing. I'm not sure that they could, if they set the wrong expectation with their buyer as far as Brianna's condo goes. Well, I don't know, maybe, and so I guess RICO is where people go for complaints and stuff like that. So that would be
the insurance, right?
Yeah.
What about the insurance, the errors and omissions or something like that? Is that what it covers you?
I've had an errors and omissions situation. See, Brianna, I'm admitting my faults here.
Oh, nice. I haven't had one.
It's not pretty, and I hated it, but I did eventually use it. And by the way, it's a good insurance policy. It does help, but if you use it, the next time you use it, it's like car insurance. There's like you have to pay $1,000 and then they pay the rest kind of stuff. So if you use it more than once, it becomes more expensive. So Laura, going to E&O is a pretty last resort, and it would have to be, they would have to have cause against it. But in the case of my case, I didn't know, I didn't understand that it was the furnace and the air conditioner were rented. So, I mean, hot water tank, yes, I get that, but I didn't realize that they had just walked into a huge contract on both of those. So, you know, I should have asked more questions when I was talking to them, because they're like, oh, it's a new furnace and it's a new air conditioner, but I didn't say like, do you own it or are you on a rental contract? So that's what happened.
Julie,
Yeah,
with regard to the driveway question,
yeah.
if it was important to the buyer for the width of the driveway, don't you think they too should have measured the width of the
Exactly.
driveway as opposed to rely on other information?
Yeah.
Drove the
really-
car down it.
Yeah.
Or tape measure or something? So, you know.
Be careful of what you say. Like in the case of the washer dryer, like I said it was new, but I didn't say it was owned. I didn't say it was rented. In the case of the driveway, I certainly didn't tell them how wide the driveway was. I made them sign off on a survey. So it covers your seller's butt better if you make them sign off on things like surveys. So if you possibly can, get them to sign off on a survey if you have one, because then it's in writing.
Mhm.
Why I attach surveys a lot to my offers, even if they're out of date. They're generally, I just don't want us to say, oh, it's an 8-foot wide driveway, when really you don't really know, because there could be a right of way, there could be a lot of other things on the driveway. Saying private drives is like super scary in the city of Toronto, so be careful of a lot of those sorts of things. But yes, I agree that if you expose the property, so a good question actually, Jay, when you said that, shouldn't the buyer know? If it sells on the first day, it's a little more dangerous for the buyer to, you know, put in a firm offer if they haven't really had a lot of time to spend. So as buyer's agents, you guys, make sure you like go into the basement, make sure you like go into the backyard, into the laneway, you open every door, you try the electric door opener, you try everything. Like often you're getting a home inspection report. So from somebody else, like when you're putting an offer on a place, often it's a home inspection report that was done prior to you actually, you know what I mean, prior to actually listing the property. Just make sure you like go really clearly through it with your buyers. Make sure you go really clearly through the property with your buyers before they make any sort of firm kind of offer. And it's also why firm offers are way more valuable than a conditional offer, even if it's $10,000 or $20,000 or $30,000 difference. It's a firm offer is night and day different between a conditional offer. In fact, conditional offer is no value compared to a firm offer, because usually conditional offers are for the benefit of the buyer and then they can get out of the deal. So they could change their mind. Even though technically it's, Paige, you gotta mute Katie over there, please.
All right.
I gotta be in control here. Okay, so is this confusing you guys, or is it okay? Michael O'Keefe, are you there?
No, it's good.
Is it helpful? We're kind of jumping all over the place, but we're talking about real life stuff, which is, I think, helpful.
Yeah, definitely helpful.
That's actually the most helpful.
The most helpful.
Thank you. Okay, so one of the things, as I was saying earlier about these checklists that Paige has, I am so confused about like these different closings and the multiple days, and it could be any day of the month and all that kind of stuff. So when I do a process with a client, I have like different plans. So I start with a plan of, okay, they're an active buyer. Have I sent them this? Have I, you know, have they signed the buyer's agency agreement? Have they, you know, are they on prospect matches? Are they on Collab? You know, are they in the database? Are they getting the open houses and solds? Like that's my sort of checklist. And it's on our CRM program. And so it just says, okay, day 1, they get this. Day 2, they get this. Day 3, they get this. Is the spouse's email in the program? And that's a big one, by the way, because often you put one person who you're communicating more with, but make sure they're both in the program. Are both their, you know, cell phones in the program? Like stupid stuff like that. but that's kind of the basics. And then you get into the offer. So that's everything from meeting like an active client to the offer. And then all of a sudden it changes. So, okay, now they've made an offer. Have you removed the conditions? Has there been an appraisal? Have you sent the cookies to say congratulations? Have you changed their address, added their new address into the CRM program? Have you, you know, like we have all these little things, like have you sent them the popcorn letter? Have you sent them this letter? You know, congratulations, this and all that. Have you notified the mortgage person? Have you sent them the movers information? So basically you have the active buyer, then you have the offer to close buyer, and then you have a close and further. It gets very confusing though in that sort of time period of an offer to close, because it could be 30 days, could be 90 days. So basically I've sort of front loaded it. And so the reminders come up quite quickly because, you know, the time could happen very quickly. So you could have a really quick closing, but I do like having reminders coming up on your calendar to say, have you done this? Have you done that? Have you done that? Have you done that? And it makes sure that the buyer gets everything that they want, and you can sort of space it out and you can like move it on your calendar. Okay, well, that's probably a little bit. And then what I do, so my next one, I do this middle in between idea, which is 10 days prior. So I do this closing and then it's 10 days back from closing. So then I go, okay, closing day, what happens on closing day? And 10 days prior to closing day, well, I want to call them a lot. I want to make sure the mortgage is done and their bank is on side. I want to make sure the lawyer has all the right information. I want to make sure our brokerage has all the paperwork. I want to do all this stuff. So I sort of do this active buyer, offer, and then this closing, but the closing is actually minus days. So if you put it in your calendar, so closing day is day 0 on -5, -8, -10 days is when you're actually, so it actually populates your calendar prior. Does that make sense at all to you guys? You catching on to my weird little idea?
Yeah, you're like setting yourself up for a smart plan kind of thing.
Well, yeah, because everyone is unique, and like I have a closing on June 11th, not June 15th. So I can't say, oh, it's a closing in 45 days. It's actually a closing in 41 days or something. So that's why I had to actually go on closing day and work backwards. And then you know for sure all of the to-dos has been done prior to closing. So again, with Katie's idea, which is you're coaching them through the whole time, a lot of the to-dos is to call your client. A lot of them is making sure they're on time. Have you packed your boxes? Have you arranged your, insurance? Have you arranged your movers? Have you arranged the elevators, for condos? That's a big, huge one. Have you, is the money from your parents or your uncle or whoever you're getting your money from, is that all arranged? Is your RSP money done? Like all of that stuff has to happen in that sort of time period, and you're sort of communicating it. And then from closing day on, then I have another one. So basically you can do -10 days closing, but on that same sort of plan has 10 closing day +1, +3, +5. It can go all the way for a year or two. It can go, okay, on day 30, I call them again. On day 45, I call them and I text them and I send them this and I send them that and all that junk. But that's kind of how our system has always worked. And it works really well. It's just a quick reminder that everybody's custom and you have to make sure. So in this day and age, we've got offers that are conditional. Condos have always been not always, but often been conditional compared to freehold homes. Freehold homes tend to be this, right now, like it was this whole, goes on the market, offer day, multiple offers, blah, blah, blah. But that's kind of best case scenario. That's not sort of normal scenario. Normal as in a balanced market or like a slower market or whatever, where there are conditionals on home inspection, conditions on, whatever. I had a situation one time a couple of years ago in Ronces where it's actually happened maybe 2 or 3 times, which is kind of scary, but where I get a home inspection report for my sellers and it says that there's an engineering issue, like as in the foundation is not as strong as you would like it to be. And that's like a huge red flag, just so you know. And it often happens in like old Victorians that weren't really well built, where they say, well, there's a crack in the foundation, or you can see, you know, through the brick that the house is kind of tilted over, or, you know, we don't know how active this moving of the property is. Actually, Brianna, we're going to use you as a good example again, and maybe Michael, which is you're on a ravine. So do you have retaining walls or anything like that?
But when we got our permits, it took like an additional 3 months because it has to go through Conservation Authority, of course.
Yes, and you don't have a retaining wall though?
No, but we're actually putting one in.
Yeah, good. So I had one on Kennedy Park a couple of years ago where it had a massive drop at the back, and they needed, and it was going to cost $100,000 to fix. And so what happened is we sold the property, but there was $100,000 put in some sort of trust account with the buyer's realtor, so that because they couldn't get permits right away to get the work done before closing. So they ended up for a full year giving $100,000 to the buyer in trust for the work to get done after they closed. So weird shit.
Sellers gave the buyers.
Yeah.
Wow.
$100,000, but it's a total drop off. So if you know where Kennedy Park is, basically it goes down to Birch View or whatever that street is underneath, and it's like a big, huge hill. And the retaining wall was crumbling, and we got a report, and the home inspection said that, and what are you going to do? So that's what we had to do. So again, and the sellers did it, my clients, because we got real, but we also realized that this is how it was going to happen, and this is how you have to sell it, and these are the options, and how can we make sure that they got almost all their money, kind of thing.
What company are you using for inspections? I always have a guy, Gordon, at Carson Dunlop, but Carson Dunlop has laid off everyone.
They were the first. I use
Superior. That's my backup.
Superior, it's okay. No, I use what's his name? Peter Yates, who used to be head of Carson Dunlop.
And what company is he with now?
He's private. Like he's his own but he's an engineer.
Okay.
Superior does, if you guys see Superior home inspections, they do like all these photos and they do all these weird things, but they're not, for engineer stuff, you definitely, like if you have any issues, like I've sold properties, for example, I had a listing on Ridley last year, 2 years ago, and the houses are like practically touching. So they've moved at some point. I've sold so many homes that have moved. I'm just going to tell you, it happens. If you ever have a question about that, I know all about houses that have moved in High Park, because there's a lot of streams that run underneath in the West End, and it just seems to be sort of a very common thing. So for example, there's other common areas where you need to, like termites, very common in the East End, obviously, Riverdale, Leslieville, places like that. So you know for sure you want to make sure you have a termite inspection in that area. But termites are also sort of around St. Clair and Runnymede, that whole area. There's been a bunch of termites. In fact, there's been some in Roncesvalles. So, you know, I mean, just knowing as realtors, you sort of get to know these areas of Toronto and what might come up. Like you're going to be looking for things like certain age of homes. You have to look to make sure that the copper and aluminum wiring are not mixed. You have to know certain buildings that the what's it called, Kitech plumbing. I've sold homes with Kitech plumbing, like actual homes that are completely filled with Kitech. Like all this stuff happens. Like all of these scenarios they're possible, and they are part of why we get paid quite a bit of money. You know what I mean? Like this is not a job. Like we're not just like we're not just sort of sales reps. We are here as professionals protecting our clients through some of these major financial investments that they're making in their life. So I hope you're sort of catching that part of this sort of conversation that we're getting. It's pretty heavy duty stuff, but it's fun. It's totally fun. It makes the job fun, but it's complicated. So
keeps you on your toes.
Keeps you on your toes. And also it's a reminder, we need to keep learning, like go to these conferences, listen to mortgage brokers, see what's going on in the financial world, see what's going on in, we have home inspectors that speak at our office meetings and stuff like that, and they know their shit, and they know what's going on in the professional sort of level of how to deal with stuff. I'm sure Paige has seen lots of RICO complaints. So RICO,
Yeah. Actually, I wanted to kind of give a quick overview because Laura asked what happens. So usually if someone has a complaint, it goes to RICO. If RICO decides that you are in the clear, then, kind of good. However, then the person that wanted to sue you or wanted to make a complaint against you, they can then take you to civil court. And that is what we have seen. I think we have 3 or 4 active civil cases. We won at RICO, and then we are in a civil case. So that can still happen.
Can you give us an example?
Yeah, I can give you an example of we listed a property was listed with a different brokerage, and we listed the property without the parking. And apparently whoever did not read accordingly and did not realize the parking was then not included, went to RICO. We won at RICO. It's been ongoing for about 2 years, and we are in the 3rd round of appeals. So
wait, someone bought a condo without a parking spot.
So it was listed with a different brokerage with a parking spot originally.
Yeah.
Did not sell. Came to us, was listed with us without a parking spot. We sold the parking as a separate sale.
Oh.
And the person that bought the condo without the parking is still livid. We are now in our 3rd round of appeal in a civil suit.
Because they want
like, what would that even, what are they appealing, or what would they?
They are appealing that they did not know and that we fraudulently did not tell them as the listing brokerage. And really, it's the buying agent that did not read the MLS.
Yeah.
Well, the status certificate.
Yeah.
Their lawyer should have read the status certificate too. Like, that's why you send the status certificate to a lawyer prior to firming up an offer.
So all of this was done, but the lady is very adamant that we are wrong. And she keeps taking us to court.
Brutal.
So, how do you make sure, for example, you don't have a financing condition right now in offers? Anybody?
Like, what do you mean? How do you offer firm?
Without a financing condition.
You get that page sign that says, I, the buyer, know I'm signing a firm offer.
That's a good start. And that's super professional to do when you hand the offer over to the seller, to have that page that says, I acknowledge that I'm removing these conditions. The other option of I actually put it in the offer and then I get the buyer to initial it, that we've crossed it out. But how do you protect your buyer? Like, how do they know that they don't need financing?
You send an email in writing and make sure you have trace of talking about it, for sure.
But how do you protect your buyer though? Like, from making a firm offer, like in a—
You're talking about like pre-approval?
Yeah. So what? Okay, so let's start with the pre-approval. What's the pre-approval? What does it say?
Basically going to a bank and having everything laid out, and them saying, because of your debt and what you'll be incurring, this is the most we'll give you on X.
Yes.
I always send the listing to the mortgage broker as well, just to be like, can you run it with the taxes and the maintenance fee and make sure that I don't get stabbed in the back here.
That's the next step. So the pre-approval is a great start, and it says, yes, I can afford up to $1 million. But what it doesn't say is I approve that property. So where the big key is to get it over to the mortgage broker and get them to approve the property prior to your offer. That's the professional way to do it. And that's the only way to protect your buyer.
The other key is to make sure they're sending it to an appraiser, that the appraisal will come back.
But we don't send it to appraisers, right? So we send it to the mortgage person who then runs it or sends it to their appraiser.
Yeah.
We basically want somebody else to say that it's somebody in the financial people who are in charge of getting their mortgage who will be able to give the A-OK. Because we can't, like, it's so often that, you know, I mean, say it's a $2 million house in wherever, Bloor West Village, and they've been approved and the buyer's really strong and they don't have a lot of debt and all that kind of stuff. But where one of the big turbulent things happens is that, so they pay 2 million for it and the bank comes back and says, actually, no, it's worth 1.8. And then you're into turbulence. So do you guys condition or go through these possibilities with your buyers prior to making offers? Do you talk about that at all? Have you ever talked to your buyers about what if there's a shortfall on the appraisal? Katie?
I've never done a deal. Brand new.
Really? Oh, this is so exciting. Okay.
I had a experience with one of my clients last year.
Yeah.
We put an offer. The house was a fixer up, right? For fixing. So when the appraisal came to the property, he was pre-approved. I do the pre-approval for them all the time, just to know the maximum credit limit, right? So it was way under to what he was pre-approved. And when they sent the appraisal said it was not, they were not giving any money for the property because it needs substantial repair, let's say, right?
Right.
So my mortgage girl said, you know, we can't do it. I said, okay, it should be another way. Like if people buy properties for repairing, right? She goes, yeah, but I can't do it. So I had to move my file to another mortgage broker. And the other option was to go for a private lender because nobody else will do the deal because the appraisal came so low. And for me, it was like you said, turbulence at the last minute. The client relies on you, trusts you, that you know what you're doing. And I didn't know what else I could do to make sure that the property would qualify for that, for the mortgage, right?
Yeah.
It was until it got to the hands of the, not to the mortgage, but the other people who approved the loans. The
appraiser?
No. It's, you go to the mortgage broker and then they send it to the underwriter, probably.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not too sure to who, but then they send the appraisal, and then the appraisal said, no, it's not even, we're not going to give any money for this property. So I end up going with another mortgage broker, and they give a private loan for 1 year.
Interesting.
You know, but it was difficult. It was really difficult, very stressful. I didn't know what other way I could handle it, like make sure that the property was really worth it or not, because the appraisal will come after the fact that you send the application to the mortgage broker.
So we've had it where I had one on Wanda a couple of years ago, which is similar scenario. They ended up getting 4 appraisers. So I don't know, they finally got some appraiser who would approve it. But I think the scenario that happened to you is pretty classic when the house needs so much work. I mean, there's HELOC mortgages and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things that you have to sort of talk to your person about is, one is that they need more equity in their property, right? So when you're buying, if, for example, that $2 million place it's appraised at 1.8, the buyer actually has to cover the difference. So you either need to go to the 1 year private lender, or what you end up doing is, so for example, if you're saying you're putting 20% down on a $2 million house, what you're doing is you're putting 20% down on the 1.8, and then they're covering the rest because the bank is only financing up to a certain amount. So you have to really talk to your clients about what happens if it comes, like I think, I'm trying to remember how much it was, years ago, like 10 years ago, we had like a $550,000 deal that came back, or maybe it was 600, and it was about 10% less. And we ended up actually negotiating the price, like, because the buyers couldn't close on it. So we ended up, like, because they pay way over in a multiple offer situation. So all of these sorts of scenarios happen, particularly now with the financing issues and uncertainty about where the prices really should be, and all that kind of stuff. So again, it's holding their hand, but also knowing their options. And what Laura did was really good, which is go to another broker. Brianna suggested the same thing today, is do you need another mortgage broker? Mortgage brokers are not all the same, just like realtors are not all the same. So, and you also need to prepare your client, especially if they pay over in a multiple offer, but it could happen even not, but mostly it's then, which is they pay the extra 300 over asking, or there was one on Constance that they paid $1 million more than asking. You think that the appraiser is going to come back? No. So what kind of financing options do they have? And basically buyers have to pay the shortfall. So it's pretty, I mean, it's fine because again, if somebody overpays now for the property, they still have the perfect property that they always wanted. They'll be there for 10 years. Their mortgage will be less because they're only being financed 20% to 1.8. So in fact, they will have more money to, maybe they need to get a loan, a $200,000 whatever loan for a little bit, like a line of credit or something like that. Like you can find ways to do this. But again, it's a lot of education, and it's a lot of confidence that you have that you can, talk to your people about this and come to them with good options and good scenarios. Like Jason Friesen, who we had as a speaker the other day, he's amazing. And he knows private lenders, and he knows people in the commercial, and he knows a lot of people. So even if he can't handle it, he can, he knows high risk people, you know what I mean? Like companies that will finance higher risk sort of mortgages. And the really good news right now is that CMHC is what they're buying. Jay, what are they buying? What's CMHC doing? Do you know? Oh, sorry, he's gone mute. Unmute you. Paige, you gotta unmute him.
I don't.
No, he can mute himself.
You don't know? Mr. Nerd himself? Okay.
The nerd is without.
Sorry, Jay's my stepfather. I can just call him a nerd anytime I want. No, I'm just joking. What I mean is they've just agreed to buy however many more billions of dollars worth of mortgages. Like they're tripling their amount. I think it's $150 billion worth of mortgages. So again, this is like education for you guys to use in your just in your knowledge and understanding when you're talking to buyers and all this kind of stuff. But CMHC only finances purchases under $1 million. So it's not as useful in Toronto, but it could be, for example, for condos, or it could be for first-time homes. But CMHC funded loans right now get lower interest rates, mortgage rates, because the banks can count on CMHC to underwrite them. So they're totally secure mortgages, unlike over $1 million, which is 20% down, and then like minimum. And then the banks are kind of on the hook for the rest. So in fact, right now, your first-time buyers, lower income even buyers, higher risk buyers will get better mortgage rates, will get better financing, because CMHC is coming in and buying so much more. Like they're tripling their investment into real estate right now.
And they will match, right? They'll match the purchase price. They'll match the down payment 5% or 10% for a new build.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a huge plus for the market right now.
Yeah, I believe your income has to be under 120,000 a year, and they'll match the 5% down that you put and take it out at fair market value when you sell.
Yeah, good stuff. Love it. So again, the banks are in love with CMHC funded mortgages. So that's an interesting thing. Oh, another topic we didn't really talk about, which is title insurance. Does anybody know what title insurance is? And Michael O'Keefe, I'm going to ask you, because you're sort of new, but you've been studying a lot. What's going on? Do you know what title insurance is? You have to unmute yourself. Michael, did I lose you? He's black. Okay, who here knows what title insurance is?
Well, it's basically to cover anything that has to do with the title itself. So any liens and stuff like that from prior ownerships or the ownership itself right now.
So when a buyer says, do I need title insurance? What do you tell them?
You do. I don't know how to say it, but I'm pretty sure you do need title insurance.
How much does it cost?
A couple $1,000s, I believe.
Any other guesses out there?
300 to 600.
There you go. Anush is much more on the money here. It's actually really super cheap. It depends on the price of the property though. So it's, you know, it basically, people use title insurance now, including mortgage brokers and banks and financial institutions, and everybody uses title insurance instead of a survey. So if there's an issue later upon, you know, was there right of way, or do you own less property, or there's some sort of cloud, then basically the title insurance covers you, because again, with insurance, it's not often used. Again, 27 years, I got lots and lots of clients, and everybody, I think it's not mandatory, but it's like almost mandatory to use title insurance now. But I had a scenario where we sold them a house in Seton Village, and it was a beautiful home, all renovated, gorgeous, and they put in a new garage, and they lived there for about 8 or 10 years. And then I went to sell it, and it turned out that the garage, so I can't even remember how my client finally figured it out, but the garage was built like a few inches over, you know, over on the neighbor's property. And it got discovered after we closed. We had no clue. And so it was very interesting to just sort of go through it. So then I have the house for sale. How am I going to sell it with this cloud on title, knowing that there's an issue? The really good part was that title insurance basically comes in and they take over. So they have to remedy the situation, which means, and different scenarios. Do you make the garage like the gutter or whatever, you know, the edge of the garage? Do you move the foundation, or do you come to an agreement with the owners next door? Or, you know what I mean? Like there's different scenarios. So title insurance is so strong that we were able to close the deal with the buyer explaining that this is what we discovered, and explaining that title insurance was taking it over, and that they would be also covered under that same title insurance. So again, I'm telling you, selling or buying, you run into this weird stuff constantly. It's just bizarre. I mean, I had no idea this was going to happen. So there you go. These are, oh, another scenario with these same clients. Oh, so she bought a house. You guys are going to love my stories. I can tell stories all day, but she bought a house, and we discovered, and this is something I learned, which is City of Toronto has a list of all of the building permits out there. And this has happened to me, I can tell you, numerous times. So now, fortunately, I know what to do. But basically, there's a building permit list in the city, and you have to see if it's closed. So if you have any major renovations on a house, like you buy a property that's been, you know, had a major renovation on it, or even a minor one, to tell you the honest truth, but the big ones for sure, go on to the City of Toronto to see if the permits have closed. So I had one recently where it hadn't closed, and the reno was like 7 years ago. So often a contractor will do a beautiful, gorgeous, fantastic renovation, but not get the permits closed because they don't care. You know what I mean? Like they're living in the house, nobody needs, and then they just sort of forget, and it just is one of those loose ends. So the added value that you guys can give your clients who are renovating right now is make sure your contractor closes the permit before you pay their last bill. It's hugely important. So the scenario happened that our client bought this property. It was all beautifully renovated. They put in the offer, and we discovered before closing that there was a couple of permits that weren't closed. And so, and it happened to me last year on a beautiful $2.5 million house. So it can happen a lot. But basically, you have to close the permit. The seller has to close the permit prior to closing. And the City of Toronto is totally cool with that. I've used city permit guys a lot, and they're really friendly and really nice, and they'll work quickly if you have a quick closing, and they'll do everything they can. But the problem is sometimes you actually have to change the house. So the big problem came in for us, which is when this client of mine, who's such a wonderful person, why did this happen? But anyway, it happened. which is that they had to actually close. So they bought a house with like floating stairs, and the permit didn't allow that, or something had to happen. So they basically had to close in the staircase, and it just kind of like was such a bummer. So again, check out that little list. I mean, it's a really easy, it can be on your checklist. You know, the offer checklist or whatever, one of your checklists, which is check to see building permits in Toronto, City of Toronto building permits. It's like super awesome site.
So you can't close if a building permit is still active on the property?
Correct.
Wow.
Yep.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
And where do you go to check to see if the building permits are closed?
It's on their city. You can like Google it now. It's really easy now. It didn't used to be so easy, but now you could just Google it, say City of Toronto building permits.
And it's just under the address?
It's under the address.
Okay.
There's also a parking one too. So if a property says it has a widened driveway or a front pad parking license, like you can confirm that on the City of Toronto website. Because sometimes, you know, it says they have it, but they don't.
Often it says that.
Yeah, like there was one that just sold for, I think Irene Kashansky had a listing and they sold it, I think like 1.4 or something. There's no legal parking.
Yeah.
Is that a misrepresentation though?
Well, if you're an agent representing a buyer, you have to do your own due diligence.
Yeah, but I mean like on the listing side.
As long as it doesn't say that there's no legal parking, then no.
Yeah, it depends on what you put on the listing.
Okay.
There's so many little loopholes in all this whole thing. If you don't put parking on a listing, you're automatically going to lose a lot of eyeballs. Like it will come up in people's prospect records, which is a huge problem. So often what you can do is you can sort of fudge the listing and say yes for one day, and then it'll come up in their prospect matches, and then you can change the listing the next day by mistake because you made a mistake on the listing that you said there was parking, but there's no parking. There are things like that, but the main thing is to make sure you change any listing. For example, even if you have an offer date set. So for example, we set offer dates for Wednesday, May 6th, and it changes. You have to make sure you change your MLS listing well in advance of the actual offers so that, again, they can't go back after and say, how did I miss this listing? You said that there were offers on this date and you didn't change it. So there are a lot of like little things on MLS listings that you sort of get good at knowing, but one of them is make sure that your paperwork is in order. Right, Paige? Yes.
Yes, and Daniela, and I have to give props to Daniela because she checks for compliance on each and every deal, and I only spot check a few of them, but she is amazing. And even still, you know, stuff gets missed. We're human, we miss stuff, but yeah, it's a huge job to be checking for the brokerage. And I used to have that position in a different brokerage, and it's a lot. Like every T has to be crossed, I has to be dotted, like everything has to be done. And I've been consulting on an offer this week for a sale of a business. And, you know, the agent, I sent them to the lawyer about 5 times to ask a question because I didn't know.
I think the buyer has coronavirus as an update.
Oh, please.
That they went from a financial to now having coronavirus. Do they have a medical certificate?
Oh,
Yeah, you can ask for that.
That's classic. This is the most fun ever, dude. I love it.
Oh my God. I'm like starting to feel a tickle now.
Okay, it's time to call your lawyer, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
Well,
you can't misrepresent like that. I feel like I could tell you guys all day, but I did sell a house about 2 years ago that we did say there was parking and there was no parking. But it wasn't intentional. The seller owned the property for like 45 years or something like that. And they had parking when they lived there. The City of Toronto cut the curb and everything. So they always believed that it was correct, but it wasn't correct. So technically it wasn't on that list. Technically, anyway, it was a very technical sort of scenario, but we had to basically put in a driveway. We had to do all sorts of crazy things. do. Like we had to do a whole bunch of landscaping. It was funny to make it legal, because basically what happened was the property line didn't start at the road. So the property line, which is quite common, actually, it's the same in my own house, is the property line starts about 10 or 15 feet from the road. So they sort of argued that the parking where we were saying the parking was actually not legal, because they were parked on city property. So we actually had, and so my clients were right, there was parking, but they had made it a garden. So we had to take out the garden, and they had put in a fence and all this stuff. So we ended up having to basically pave or interlocking brick further up that was beside the house, which is where they actually own, because the buyers didn't want to live, or they didn't want to have to park on illegal property, like it wasn't legal. So it was interesting, these different things that sort of come up and the compromises that we have to sort of come up with. And it happens a lot in older homes, you know, particularly old houses.
Julie, did you get a permit for that parking after?
Well, it was parking, but it wasn't where it was. So we just had to, so technically we had put garden, my clients had put a garden in where the parking was. So they were just putting it back. So technically there was parking there, but it was a garden. So so the buyer said, well, we can't park there, so you have to make it parkable. It's very interesting.
Julie, do you know if a backwater valve is code for new construction?
Oh, I'm sure it's code.
You're positive?
Well, 99% positive, but I'm not 100%, but you check it, but I would be shocked if it wasn't.
Okay, because I'm dealing with some plumbing issues.
Are you?
Yeah.
So in a renovation though, or a new house?
Well, it's a rebuild, but like they completely altered the whole footprint of the house, and like I would say 95% of the house is new. So
And there was a permit, obviously. So
yeah, and I put in the offer that everything was with permits, warranty. I'm covered. It's just a matter of we're gonna have to go through insurance, and if the deductible, now we have to go. It's just like we talked about. There's always something. So
yeah. Well, I would say, I don't know if you have a good contractor, but he would know for sure, like a building contractor, somebody who actually does larger, you know, renovations. They would know. I can ask my guy, or you can call up building permit guy and ask them right away, person.
yeah, one of my colleagues says it's not. So now I'm just confused because I thought it was too.
I thought for sure it would be for a large rental like that.
Yeah, apparently a sump pump is code, but
Yeah.
but I don't think I don't know. Anyways, once I know, I'll update everyone.
It's a major bonus now. Okay, are we totally off topic? Paige, where do you want me to go now? Inspection, reply, or rejection? Okay, so Brianna's perfect example of this whole, well, hers is firm, so it's maybe not. So in an inspection, sometimes actually in Vancouver, Jay might have better experience on that one, where people actually did offers and then they said, no, you have to do this prior to closing. Right, Jay?
Usually it would be prior to subject removal. It wouldn't be after subject removal to closing. There's different dynamics there. So either they negotiate before subject's removed, but not after. Once the deal's done, tough luck.
No, I know. I know you. I'm just talking about the negotiation part of it. The work is done after the subjects are removed, but the actual negotiation happens between the offer and the condition being firm, right?
Yes, sorry. Mm-hmm.
So, and it's quite common in Vancouver that you can come and say, oh, the roof is, you know, getting older and I would like money off. Or
yes.
Yes.
I've seen it on a contact too.
Oh, right, contact. Okay.
Contact or polybutyl B plumbing, which is the gray piping that's found in an inspection to replace the boiler or the tubing, or as an example.
Yeah.
Or aluminum. Well, aluminum wiring really isn't that expensive. If you do copper paste, join it to the copper and do the proper pigtails, that's maybe $1,000. Small potatoes. But roof, plumbing, If there's a major or electrical, like knob and tube that needs to be done, maybe. Drainage is another. Asbestos abatement also is another.
So it's so interesting, you know, over the years talking to my parents about what goes on in Vancouver real estate versus Toronto real estate, because we have been blessed beyond belief to not have that problem. So essentially what happens is there's very rarely a negotiation. Occasionally, if something crazy comes up, like something really expensive comes up, and then you have to do it. But often buyers just buy the house and get what they get. But it's also why I do a pre-sale home inspection to warn the buyer, well, this is what you get. And so then as a buyer's agent, you sort of have to factor it in prior to making your offer, essentially. But it's not very common here that there's an abatement or a negotiation. There could be a little bit. I don't know if anybody here has ever had an abatement on an offer. It's so rare that I don't know, I haven't seen it much.
I've only seen one for 10 grand on high tech plumbing.
Yeah, so there could be, for example, in a status certificate, if there's a special assessment or something like that, they might go with that, right? So if that sort of came up and nobody knew about it, and then the lawyer sort of raised that sort of issue, that might come up. So it's not very common. I had a scenario way back when I actually bought my cottage, and I realized as a realtor from Toronto that I didn't know about cottage properties. So I did not write my own offer. I let another realtor do it, and I let them get paid, and I didn't do anything. I didn't even take a referral fee because I felt like it was their professional job. I kind of feel like the agent didn't do such a hot job either, though, because what happens, a very interesting thing that I learned, which is if you're not buying with a mortgage, like if you're buying a property with, say, a line of credit, or which means that you're not needing an approval of the property, or you're buying it with cash, then some of the rules that the bank has don't apply, right? So to get a mortgage, you know, banks and financial institutions have huge rules as far as this has to be done, this has to be done, this has to be done. You know, you have to have insurance, you have to have this, you have to have that. When you're buying without a mortgage, it's a totally different animal. But anyway, so for example, I never had a water test. So, and then of course the water was no good, and we didn't find that out until afterwards. And then we had to put in a new, you know, whatever, well, and all that stuff. But the point of the story is try not to sell properties that you don't have a lot of experience in, which would be commercial, unless you really feel good about it and you've learned a lot and you've studied it. Laura, you might do commercial, I can't remember, but maybe. But you have to know a lot about it. Properties out of town, not on municipal water, not, you know, like, just beware. And if you don't know about condos, ask people who do know about condos, because condos alone are its own little crazy animal. But you can learn it because it's pretty common in Toronto, and you just have to sort of read through status certificates, you know, understand what's going on with builders. And like, for example, if you're buying a new build and what all that means, you know, all the different, so for example, we've got a client who bought a new build years ago, like 4 years ago, maybe, or 5 years ago. It's like crazy, it's taking forever. And of course their lives have changed. And what are the rules for renting it out in occupancy? How much is the occupancy going to be? How much does it cost to do an assignment sale? You know, all the different things. So new builds, again, lots and lots of complications that you know, just be cautious, I would say, because we're sort of showing you examples. Like, I'm fairly competent in the resale market, and I've run into a lot of problems, right? So this can happen at any time. Weird stuff happens, but new builds are kind of a weird animal. Assignment sales are crazy weird animals. You definitely need your lawyer and your mortgage broker involved in assignment sales. And again, I've done quite a few now, so I'm okay at it, but it's still complicated. How to even write up an offer for that is crazy. Knowing who the builder is, getting confidence of, like, for example, which builders finance themselves, which builders are getting financing, which builders, you know, it will give you a really good example of, you know, what to expect as far as how long the occupancy is going to be and all those kind of things. So a buyer needs you guys to be their advisor and needs you to really protect them, you know, and keep them aware. And even, you know, even if they're okay, like tons of people buy new builds all the time. Like it's not that crazy of an idea. And of course it really makes sense because the tiered pricing and the low, you know, I mean, then their money is held and then it goes up in value and stuff like that. But there's a lot of loopholes and a lot of pitfalls that I would sort of tell you to. And I'm telling you this as a friend as much as anything else. Just try not to get yourself too deep into things that you're not totally aware of or comfortable with, and ask another colleague or something like that for help. Okay, so now we talked a little bit about checklists and stuff like that. Brianna, you've got lots of experience. Tell me about your checklists.
I don't know. Like I think I've worked on so many deals with the team that I'm just kind of systematic. I just kind of follow along. Like I don't add everyone to my database. Like if I get a realtor.ca lead, I'm not automatically adding them to my database because like 90% of them have their own realtors. So if you're just like flooding your database with junk, the people that matter, the 20% of the database, are going to get that much more diluted. So I really only try to add people to my database that matter. And from there, just, you know, adding them to the prospect match, making sure I have their updated email, their updated cell phone. There's like a notes section. So trying to keep notes on people, like if they're talking about their dog or their niece, or, you know, they love running, or, you know, just making notes so that in 6 months from now, or 3 months or 2 weeks or whenever, you know, you can kind of bring up these touch points, I guess, and things to keep yourselves connected. And then, I mean, I print out a checklist that I keep in my like daily journal of like my active kind of buyers and sellers. And I make it a point to touch them at least once a week. So if I look and I'm like, oh, I haven't talked to this person this week, like I'm just going to randomly pull what's sold, or say, hey, you know, I think this one looks great for you. Or so just trying to stay on top of everyone at least once a week. And then, you know, if someone's like, oh, you know, I'm kind of just focusing on not losing my job in the pandemic right now, then I'll make a note to, okay, follow up in 2 weeks. So just trying to keep it in front of you, but I don't really have like a set kind of, like you said, you're +10, -10. I mean, when I do a deal, I make sure that everything gets sent to the brokerage, everything gets sent to the lawyer, and then everything gets sent to the mortgage broker. And then from there, just constantly checking in, you know, you getting all ready, and then, just kind of asking those. To me, it seems so straightforward, but I guess to new agents, a checklist is definitely ideal.
Well, a checklist, I mean, I've always done it through a CRM, so which means it just keeps coming up under, like, you know, in your calendar, like you have to do this. And I think the main reason for me is that you can scale it. You know what I mean? Like you, instead of having a couple of clients or a few clients, you can have multiple clients doing multiple things over multiple years.
Right.
So that's sort of the big plus, I think, is that, you know, for example, like all those letters that have to go out, and just the turbulence letter, or the, you know, reticular activator letter, or all these letters that have to go too. But I mean, I think some people do use literally in your journal, like, you know, your daily whatever that you carry with you printed, or some people have it in their to-do list or calendar or something like that. But Command presumably has a lot of plans, right, Paige?
It does, yeah, Command. So we've actually put in the compliance checklist for the brokerage. So you can see everything that you need for a deal, and what section of the deal that you're in that you'll need it. And then Danielle and I were coming up from a realtor's perspective. We're adding that as a file for a new agent, what you would need to do right from you have someone interested in a property to the follow-up asking for the referral, the deal has been completely closed. So, and then following up on the first anniversary, the mortgage anniversary, and that kind of information. So we'll get those out to you once they've been finalized, and they are going to be loaded in Command. Command is going from your contacts to your opportunities to your database. You'll be able to submit your all your paperwork to the Market Center for compliance and commissions that way in a few months, I believe. You can already start submitting for compliance and keeping it all together, so that it is going to be like basically the super system that you're signing onto one system for everything.
Well, and it's paperless, right? So,
and it's paperless. It comes with your DocuSign. So when you put the opportunity in of your client is, you know, putting an offer in on this house, and then you're loading all of the paperwork. Once you've loaded all the paperwork, you can send it to DocuSign. And then once it's all came back and you've loaded it there and you've put, we told you you needed an APS, we told you you need a confirmation of co-op, et cetera, then there's a button that says submit to Market Center and you're done.
so, but the CRM, like Command is a CRM program.
It is a CRM also, yeah. So it has your contacts and your opportunities, and it takes it through the pipeline to tell you, you know, to tell you this is the opportunity. Also, you can put them on a smart plan to say you're looking, and there's, I think, 7 or 8 smart plans, and there are now customizable. You can have it for the birthday, neighborhood nurture. You can set them in the neighborhoods they're looking at and put them on a neighborhood nurture plan, and it will send them those listings monthly, bi-monthly, bi-weekly, whatever you set it as. You know, there's like so many things in there, so much information. I can hardly keep on top of it all. It also will be your referral network with other KW agents. You can become referral partners. So you have someone in BC that you want to refer them to. And we are now saying that the average referral fee worldwide is 36%. So we need to start asking for more than 25. And someone from BC or Florida can be sending you a referral. And you just become the referral partner if you know, have a lot of business and try to have someone in every state, every country that we're doing business. Mariana had a listing in Dominican Republic, right? And she listed it, but she could have easily referred that out too. So it's definitely going to be like this super system of your CRM, referrals, your opportunities, your paperwork, like everything. If you haven't had a chance to get into it, get into it.
Talk about selling outside of your scope. She's going to Dominican.
Okay, that's like totally against my religion, but anyway. So to simplify it, you call those smart plans, correct?
They're smart plans, yes. You're going to set your clients up on a smart plan.
So the big thing, kind of what Brianna touched on, which was you could meet somebody from realtor.ca and they're not active right now, right? Like they're not, whatever, they're not really great.
They might not even have a job.
They might not have a job, and they might have another realtor, and they might have whatever. But if you connect with them and they don't have a realtor and you sort of want to set some drip plans up or something like that. So there's that potential opportunity or whatever it's called.
So you
Or
can put them in as a client or as a referral.
right. You know, I mean, you can have people in a very low touch. They're not on your daily call list.
Yeah, no.
So you can have those drippy people, or you can have your really active buyers and sellers who are, you know, actively looking for properties, or you can have people in the closing process of they put in offers, they're, you know, closing, or what I call afterwards is celebration. So they've closed and now they're in the, you know, 1 year celebration kind of stuff. So you have to, that's why I sort of use these plans, is because people are at different stages. They could be like, I've got a client moving next year, for example, they're selling next year. So they're not going to be on my active clients, but I have them in my pipeline. So I have a pipeline that says, you know, lead. And then the next one is met for consultation. Then the next one is, are they, you know, are they active or are they incubating, what I call incubating. So incubating means that they're thinking about it, you're sending them information, but they're not your super active people. And then you have your actives, and then you have your like for sales, and like you have to have people. So everybody's on different sort of timelines, and that's where the CRM is your friend, is to remember to have these systems so that you can keep on top of them all, and that they're not sort of falling through the cracks, and you get those referrals at the end of the day.
Yeah.
That's
And
sort of
put a tag on and each contact. You can link them with the spouse. You can put them a tag, different tags, different categories, different whatever you want.
Yeah, like if, for example, we have what they call, you know, your referral tree. So say Jay referred Katie, and then Katie referred Brianna. So Brianna did her deal. Then you call Katie and say, Katie, it was so awesome. Brianna just did a deal with me, and I just loved working with her, and it was amazing. And then you call Jay and say, Jay, you would never believe what happened. So you referred Katie. Katie's amazing. I love working with her. And like 2 years later, she referred Brianna, who I just helped, you know, buy whatever, a house in Swansea. And then you have them all sort of connected, and then you're really building deep of these relationships and sort of a long-term sustainable kind of business. And the more plans you have and the more checklists. So you've got this thing that Daniela sent you as far as the student material. These are good checklists. I mean, you can customize them a little bit because they're not totally Toronto-y, but some of them are pretty good. And then we've talked lots about the fun little contingency or issues and all that kind of stuff. So date of completion. So what do you guys do for fun for date of completion? Like, meaning closing day happens. Jay, what would you suggest? What fun things do you do?
What fun things do I do? Well, in BC on closing, it's really the possession, which would be the next day or 2 or 3 days, and actually have a gift for them at the time of closing. But really, it's just a question of registration. Sorry.
You guys bring them the key or something like that?
No, the keys be possession date, which is usually a different day than closing date. But yes, I would definitely get the keys from the listing agent and bring them to them and celebrate with them at that time of when they take possession.
So in Toronto, generally speaking, we don't have to be there for closing. We don't have to.
No.
We don't have to do really a lot. So we're like little princesses over here. The good part is, though, that you can have some fun with it. Well, number one is the things is to make sure your lawyer notifies you that it closes so that you can call your clients. And Paige and Daniela do a lot of that too. And then the other thing is, some people order pizza on, you know, to help them with their move. Some people drop by with a little gift basket. Some people just text them and celebrate with them. They do bring wine. I mean, you can do anything. Like last year, I was there on closing because the lawyer called me and said that, and I had been there for the access visit the night before, and I told the lawyer that it wasn't really ready to close, right? Like the house was not packed up. And the lawyer had said, well, we should have an access visit very close to closing. So you guys know that, right? So an access visit nice and close to closing, like the day before or 2 days before, is a really good way to protect your clients. So we had this access visit. The seller was not really prepared. He was a single older gentleman who was really not with it, not ready to go. You could tell he was very, very unready. So anyway, I went over that afternoon of closing day to make sure that it was worth the buyer's lawyer transferring the money, or should they hold back because they weren't able to get in. And their realtor, who's also in our office, was there packing the house for the seller. So they were literally in the home, vacuuming it, doing the kitchen, you know, packing up all the kitchen stuff. Like, it was insanity, but they had spent the day doing that for their agent or for their client. So there's a variety of things that you can do for your client to wow them, and that is one of them. Other wow things, like I know one of my clients is still amazed, like it happened quite a bit actually. One big thing to wow a client, and this has nothing really to do with closing, but anytime I go and do any gardening, so I can plant flowers, cut their lawn, weed their grass, you know, whatever, rake their grass, sweep their driveway, anything like that. People love that shit. I've painted houses for them. I've done everything under the sun. So you can do it too. I bring my little vacuum over and I vacuum the place up. I do whatever I can. But on closing, things can happen. My own personal house, I got possession, I got the keys, and I walked in and they had taken away everything. They took away our towel racks. The garage was full of shit, like everything. It was full of all kinds of garbage and blah, blah. My partner, I remember I helped her buy her house prior to actually whatever. Anyway, and they hadn't moved out, and they had, and then my partner actually had to stay overnight with the movers. Like they could not move into the house because it wasn't ready to go. So every problem can also happen right on closing day, just as a reminder, right there. So that's where the communication happens, and because that's where people get disappointed. So just remember, that's another opportunity time where things aren't always as clean, as tidy. Maybe the tenants didn't leave it very well. You know, the clean and broom swept condition didn't really happen. You know, they left crap in their garage or the basement or whatever happened. So just remember that's the time to be in communication. It's in time to have fun with them. It's time to celebrate, hopefully. But if it's also a time to listen and be their sort of confidant when they're upset and they feel like they overpaid or they're getting buyer's remorse again. And, you know, they showed it to their parents and their parents can't believe how messy it was left. And then, you know, they've got a newborn and they're stressed and all that other shit that's going on in their life. So
I heard recently someone gave like a week's worth of like good food deliveries to their client. And as a mother of 3, I was like, wow, that is like such a great idea.
wow. Yeah. Wows are amazing, right? So when you say wow, that's the goal.
Right.
Goal.
So yeah, I think if they have like kids, and because then you don't want to feed them like McDonald's on moving day or pizza on moving day is great, but what am I going to feed them the rest of the week while I unpack everything? So, you know, I thought that was like such a smart idea.
Mm-hmm. Or you can, you know, get something from a local restaurant or something thoughtful. You know, it's all very dependent on the person and the scenario, but again, there are opportunities for referrals, opportunities for developing stronger and deeper relationships with people. And, you know, asking for the referral doesn't come right at the end, but it is an opportunity, again, to ask for feedback, get the social media 5 stars, get the, you know, all the reviews you want. Like you can do a video testimonial, you can do any kind of testimonial. You know, those are all super valuable later too. Okay, so we're coming down to the time just flew by here. Do you guys have any final questions or ahas that you want to share or anything like that?
Julie, can you tell them when they do ask for the referral?
When do you ask for the referral?
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you first meet them, that's the first time you ask for the referral. You say before you even helped buy or sell them a property, you hope they're so excited and, you know, with the whole experience that they're happy to refer other people. I say that's my goal right from the very beginning, and you say it right through to the end. And you say it now too, 10 years later, 5 years later, 3 years later, 12 years later. So, but the video testimonials have been very effective for us. The social media, you know, Facebook reviews, that sort of thing have been super effective. There's nothing wrong with an old-fashioned letter. I do a picture, you know, by the sold sign or whatever with the clients. Like you can do all sorts of fun stuff there. But again, any time is always a good time to be talking about how, you know, how important it is that the more you can be working with referrals, the less time you're looking for business, which means the more time you have to spend on the clients and helping them through their transactions. Right?
Right.
Any other questions? Any ahas? Anything you're going to take from this today?
Well, just all of your, like, I'm going to say real life stories where are helpful just to remember that, you know, there is bad with the good, but, you know, we'll get through it.
And you survived. I survived.
Survive.
And the clients did too, right? So like life is, it seems at the time like the scariest thing in the world. And I remember Kat being at the office one time and she was having this problem and she was like, pulling her hair out. And I do too. I'm I'm not immune to being stressed out or worried or freaking out about a deal. And then, and then another one comes and another problem happens or another plus happens and you meet these wonderful clients. So it's part of the roller coaster of it. It's just part of the deal. And I think it's good to be emotionally involved with your clients in some ways, like care for them, not to the point where you're not, making wise decisions on their behalf, but be involved enough to care about, their situation, their personal situation. So you guys are doing, what's the next one, Paige?
The next one was with me on Friday, and it's just blast off.
It's with you.
It's with me.
Ooh.
I'll bring your questions.
So Brianna,
bring your questions, I guess.
You're going to tell us about the backwater valve.
Yep.
And you're going to tell us what happened with this condo closing date.
If he has corona or not.
That's a classic.
Oh
my God.
What a mess. I'm going to go call both lawyers.
Yeah, go get them. Go get them.
Yeah.
I'm really excited for this.
Yeah.
They say the more problems you have, the more business you're doing. So
there you go. That's what my lawyer always says to me. He's like, this is what, it's exactly what he says to me all the time.
Exactly. We always say that too. If you get a RICO complaint, we're like, well, it's only the good agents that are doing so much business to get away.
Oh, shit.
It's not often, but it happens.
Yeah.
And I would say of the, I don't know how many I've had, maybe 2 or 3 in total, you're almost always exonerated. It's not really, people are just venting,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just love your people. Love your people. Okay.
Thanks, Julie. Thanks, everyone.
Julie.
Thank you. Good luck, Rihanna.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Bye.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.